president of the Cienega Valley Association. And we've been working to try to get something done for the community on PFAS. And basically from the day we learned about it, we've been trying to start organizing and implementing. And so what we're going to do today, and I hope you got a copy of, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the handouts that are up front just to begin. There's an agenda. I'm also going to pass around, because I know nobody saw it on their way in, because we didn't have it set up yet, our listserv registration. We send out notices about various things, but PFAS is one of them, but we also do all kinds of stuff. We're working on a fuel reduction program with the Santa Fe County Fire Department for the areas where we have bosque in the community. We're going to be doing community planning through the county, and then we're also, of course, working on water quality, and we have a number of different initiatives that are working on water quality and basic, protections for our agricultural and rural traditions in the community. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass around the listserv. I probably sent out about 4 emails a month. Most of them are just saying, hey, there's meetings on this topic, this topic, this topic. So it's totally up to you if you want to sign up, but I'm going to pass it around so if you can, along with a couple of pens. All right, so I'll do 1 to this table and a pen. And if we're already on your list, you can just put your name if you're already on the list. Yeah. Let me go grab a pen, or if somebody wants to grab a pen for me here. Oh, thank you. Okay. So the other handouts we have up there, first of all, there is about, and I'll go through kind of how we came to know about the fact that there was contamination in wells in La Cienega, which is the first area we recognized that there was contamination. And kind of the timeline of what we knew and how we came to where we're at today. I think that's really important for residents to know, to kind of know what's already in the works, what's already kind of being worked on, and so that you can give us direction on where you want to go next. And so that's kind of what we're going to work on today. This is actually a meeting of our subcommittee. So the Valley Association in February established a subcommittee specifically for La Cienega. We have 2 representatives of La Cienega on our board, Jolene, who's here today, and Angelique, who is not here today. The idea was to get those representatives to start finding residents and organizing them around this issue so that we could get as many people from out in La Cienega to come and put their input into this process out into the world. So with that, I'm gonna also say that this meeting is a collaborative effort. Because one of the first things we did is reach out to the county. And the county has become very involved in the PFAS issue on behalf of local residents. And so we are working with them in coordination. For instance, normally for our organization, we have to pay $75 to rent this center every single meeting, and we have like $3,000 in our entire account. And so it's really hard on us when we have to pay those kinds of fees. But the county is actually providing the space for us for these meetings. Also, we're collaborating with them on a number of different initiatives to try to get different types of relief to residents. And Shelly Moeller is here from the county. She's actually been hired by the county as a public liaison for PFAS. And so she's here to actually help the public with this issue. She's actually under contract with the county. Commissioner Bustamante hustled to get that contract in place to get Shelly on board as soon as she possibly could. So with that, I'm going to actually go through the purpose of this meeting. So this is the first meeting of the community, where the community is going to tell us what they want next. And the other thing we're asking for is right now there's about 3, maybe 4 of us who are coordinating everything. We really need people to be on our subcommittee, to actually be dedicated members of the subcommittee, to help with things like, I'll tell you, I was at my house, I have 2 kids, I was at my house, I'm printing all these copies, I'm trying to staple copies, I don't have time. I found the community center's not open yet, so I have to open the community center, run in here, set up tables. Those are all things that if people are on our subcommittee, it would be very helpful to just have that support. Because for 4 people to handle this issue by themselves, it's just too much. So the purpose of this meeting is first to explain where we're at, what we've done, and what we're trying to do at this point in time, to figure out where you want to go, and to also figure out who can serve on the subcommittee and help with all these tasks to keep things moving forward, and to keep pressure. As much as we love the county and they're doing as much as they can, we need to keep our own independent pressure on our government entities to keep moving these issues forward. So that's really the purpose of this meeting. So we're going to start off just going through the timeline of what's happened. Talk a little bit about collaboration between the Valley Association and the county thus far. And then we'll go, there's going to be a presentation by a contractor who installs filtration systems. I'm going to give you a big disclaimer right away. We're not promoting that particular business. He is here to tell you about the types of systems, okay? So he's just here to tell you what types of systems there are and the approximate cost, so you can think about that and have it in your vocabulary when you go out to get your own bids or whatever you want in terms of filtration. And then I think we'll also have a couple of, Phyllis Baca, who's a resident, who's been setting up her question and answer drive-through over by Las Golondrinas. She's also going to talk a little bit about filtration systems and her research into it as a resident. And then we will go into the actual subcommittee, try to develop a subcommittee from the people who are here or people you know of that are not here who you think would be good members for the subcommittee. And then to figure out the topic for next meeting. For instance, we selected filtration because we think it's kind of, well testing and filtration is kind of a first step in this whole process. There's tons of other things that need to be done, but that's step 1. We want to have another presentation probably on health, right? And how PFAS affects your health. And for that, we'd like to get people from the Department of Health to come. The county will help us coordinate with them to try to get people over here to talk about all these various issues. We could have the city come and we can talk about the wastewater treatment plant and whether there's PFAS coming out there. We can have the National Guard come and talk about the draft report and what they found. You know, so we can do all those things. It's all within your reach, but we do need help doing it. So that's the bottom line. So I'm going to go through the timeline. I encourage you, if you're curious about what's been happening, to just grab a copy of this timeline. It's really small print because I have to pay for all these copies myself. So I'm trying to save on paper when I print these things out. So I apologize to those of us who have readers. Have somebody help you look at that or ask me if you can't read it, let me know. I can email or mail you a copy. So first of all, the firefighting folks, let's talk about that. So they were being used by the National Guard in the mid-2000s, around 2005-ish. And they were associated with the use of a particular fire truck that they would clean out at that National Guard facility. And then in 2012, they actually constructed a new grounds, which is the Army Aviation Support Facility. And in 2020, they did the first preliminary assessment. Why did they do the assessment? Okay, so the reason that this was even discovered is because nationally, PFAS and firefighting foams is a huge issue. And most of the litigation pertaining to firefighting foams, it has been done mostly at Air Force bases and military establishments where there are a lot of fires and they need to put those fires out because it's usually associated with these firefighting foams, at least the high concentrations. So the National Guard and the Department of Defense on a national level started conducting testing for PFAS at every facility where they had ever used firefighting foam. That is how this came about. Okay, so in 2020, although we didn't know anything about it, which we won't tell you the timeline until much later, the National Guard actually conducted their first preliminary assessment for PFAS. And then in May of 2022, they completed that assessment. Nobody knew anything about this except for the Guard at this point in time. Then in April of 2023, the National Guard invited certain public officials, including the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe County, and the environmental department, to come to the facility to look at the issue of PFAS and explain that they had found higher than acceptable levels of PFAS in soil samples and in, was it in the monitoring well as well? No, one of the monitoring wells was a no, I believe, but the other one was positive. Yeah. And then, okay, so that's when the county, this is last year in April, so a year ago, the county found out about it, and the city found out about it. Then, in October of 2023, the National Guard actually released that report, the draft report on PFAS, which created a remedial process for the National Guard and also allowed everybody to distribute the information publicly. In November of 2023, we found out about it, I think it was in October is when we first found out about it. Towards the end of October. In November, we actually sent a copy of the draft report to our entire membership, which is about 300 members. One person responded. Why? Because nobody reads. Okay? Because it's like 100 pages. So I got one response, and this was back in like November last year. And we knew it was a problem, but we were saying, well, how do we get residents to recognize that there's a problem? Okay, so we also immediately reached out to Commissioner Bustamante. I talked to her personally. I said, hey, what's going on with this PFAS? We've got this report, and we don't know, how we're going to get residents on board and let them know what's going on with this. So also in November, the county put out a press release about PFAS. And that is the first time that residents started saying, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? So then we got a big response, okay? And maybe part of that was me as a person not fully understanding how to explain that. When I had that first, when I sent out the report, because I didn't really understand PFAS myself. I'd never heard of it. It was new to me too. So I was still trying to understand it. So I couldn't say, hey, this is an emergency. I just had to be like, well, there's some in some of these wells, and there's some in the soils, and the EPA doesn't have a standard, and that was kind of where we were at that point in time. So anyway, by November, we have the public becoming informed about PFAS. In January, and just so you know, the LCVA has been holding meetings this whole time, the board, and trying to figure out next steps and how to kind of move this issue along. Then in January of 2024, the county hired Shelly on, which is a huge step, because one of the things Camila asked is, what do you need? She said, I'm your commissioner, what do you need? I said, we need to have frequently asked questions answered, and we need somebody to work with the community that can help to answer questions. That was the first thing I said. And so she jumped on it, and she got Shelly hired. And I don't even know when that's really quick for a county contract, just so you know. So at that point in time, I started working with Shelly, and she started putting together the list of, we already had a list of frequently asked questions that we had put together, most of them back in November. And so I sent those from the people who were at our regular meetings, okay, not from the whole community about PFAS. So I sent those over to her. She had a bunch of additional questions, and she put together she actually, this is a big thing too, to have the county actually dedicate part of their website to this topic so that residents could access the information. So that was the other thing, is that we got the county to put it up on their website, which Shelly coordinated that with the county to get the website set up so that people could access the frequently asked questions, so that we could post resources on there and continue to update the resources for residents through the website. So then, February of this year, as I stated before, the LCVA decided to create a subcommittee because it just wasn't feasible for Jolene and I to kind of keep doing this without some help. And so then this is the first meeting of the subcommittee. Okay. February 6th, we sent a letter to the LCVA, sent a letter to all the government officials we could think of who could have a role in this. To the city, the county, the environmental department, the governor's office, the EPA, and we basically listed 7 points that we thought needed to be addressed immediately for residents. It was immediate access to a source of clean drinking water, resources for free or low-cost well testing, and filtration as needed. What else did I have? There's 7 points. Help me think of the other 7. There was, and we actually said there wasn't just PFAS. That's another thing I want to point out to you, is that water quality has been an issue out here for some time, not just from whatever's coming off of the airport, whatever's coming out of the National Guard facility, but what's coming from the wastewater treatment plant. Because there's a lot of things that don't get tested for, and contaminants that, including, basically like oil derivatives and stuff like that, that are also contain PFAS, that are not tested for. And so there's a lot of things coming out of that wastewater treatment plant that aren't tested for, and we'd like to get those tested. So we also pointed out that we needed more testing, and we needed our government officials to create a task force to assist residents with this issue and to come together and figure out how to resolve it. Because we said, regardless, we're not pointing fingers at who is particularly responsible. We just want you all to come to the table and start providing resources and help for residents, because the residents didn't cause it. So that letter was very successful. We actually got a response from all but the city of Santa Fe and the EPA. The governor's office forwarded their communication to the environmental department for response, and they all got in touch with us right away. And then I believe it was, I put it on here. So we actually met with the National Guard, the county, and representatives from Teresa Ledger Fernandez's office and Ben Ray Lujan's office to try to coordinate this task force, which the county agreed that they would do, that they would work on getting the governmental entities to cooperate and work together to start assisting residents, and to start looking into creating regular monthly meetings so that residents could have their voice heard and get information about PFAS and get their questions answered, which is kind of, and we were already creating our subcommittee, so we put it all kind of together into one thing where it's basically a joint and collaborative effort between the Valley Association and the county to inform residents about these issues and to bring them together to try and help bring them together. I also want to mention that, let's see, so then that also resulted in that big meeting on March 14th, the town hall meeting, where there were about 230 residents who actually attended that meeting. And Commissioner Bustamante and the commission and the county manager, they decided that the best format for that would be a panel as opposed to all the residents talking at once, because they knew there was going to be a really big turnout. And so that's why they did it in that format. We actually did kind of object to that initially, I'll say. But I think that it worked out in terms of at least getting through a bunch of questions. And you were required to submit those ahead of time. Our organization had been meeting with the residents that regularly come to our meetings again, And we had come up with about 100 questions that we submitted prior to that to try to get as many of them to these officials as we could for that meeting. So then, in the meantime, we've been talking about all this other stuff. So it's not like that's all we were doing. There's all this in-between stuff. We're talking about trying to create a mapping program where you could get people to provide their private testing results and kind of see where you get like pockets of PFAS in certain areas. That turns out to be a very complicated thing because as soon as you give any information to the county, it becomes a public record. So if the county is going to map it, everybody's well number and everything that's on your test results are going to be public. There's a lot of issues that have to be addressed in terms of privacy, information sharing, disclosure, all that. So that's kind of on the slow end of things. But I think Phyllis Baca is trying to work on a program currently, and maybe Shelly can talk more about that. And then we also have been just addressing the issue of, so one of the major hurdles that we've come across is that government entities can't donate money to private entities. They can't give it away because there's something in the Constitution called the anti-donation clause. The anti-donation clause says you can't benefit one person over another in the community. And so the issue we've had with well testing and getting funding for it is that the county can't just test everybody's private well because it's a violation of the anti-donation clause under the Constitution. So this has been an issue that we've been trying to get around. So what happened is the environmental department allocated $459,000 to the county to characterize the PFAS contamination and try to find the sources of contamination. So what the county is going to do is they're going to have to strategically select private wells that they think will help to characterize the plume. And that's kind of how we're trying to get around the anti-donation clause because it's basically a benefit to the county to use private wells as opposed to drilling a monitoring well. A lot of people said, oh, you just use all this money to drill a monitoring well. If a government entity does one, probably costs about $150,000. A normal person gets a well for $50,000, but that's the way that capital outlay works. That's what I've kind of found out through my estate case where I was looking at an irrigation well. And our bid came back at $150,000, and we thought easily 50 would cover that irrigation well. So it's not really that great to do too many monitoring wells, maybe one or two or a couple here or there, but there's a lot of things that we've been looking at and trying to do. But I want you to understand kind of that background and all the things that we've been doing to try to move PFAS forward. I think one of the other things that's been a real problem is trying to get a source of clean drinking water. So there are a couple things that can be done. There are some fill-up stations that are pretty cheap, relatively speaking, where you can go and fill up, a big water tank. But the filtration really is the number one thing that you can do to protect yourself. And a lot of the filtration systems, and this is what we'll go into, actually can be fairly affordable. So I think that that's one thing. I also have seen the giant sign that says, do you want to sell your home, that somebody put up very recently over there by the OHO sign on Los Pinos. When you're going over there, you notice that? I just want to tell you, don't sell your home over $100 water filter that you may have to get for your sink. Okay, so that's one thing I want to convey to the community is, there are people who are going to try to take advantage of this situation. Don't let yourself be taken advantage of. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Shelly to talk a little bit more about the collaboration between the Valley Association and kind of what else is being done right now to address the contamination.
Thanks. So I also just want to say that my background is public health. I'm not a water specialist or a hydrologist or anything like that. So that is my background. And let's see, I took some notes on some additional things I wanted to say to complement what Andrea just told you. And you mentioned that report, the site report that came out initially from the Army National Guard, talking about the contamination. It really is very complicated, multiple pages. So, you know, I'm not surprised that nobody like read it and understood it. I mean, the first time I looked at it, I was like, I have to save this for later. So I just wanted to tell you that was a really complicated report. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to tell you all, give you some updates. So Andrea talked about one of the things that she or you all asked for in that letter was a task force between the different stakeholders and players that will really are responsible for responding to this issue. And that is the Army National Guard, the local one here in the state, the National Army National Guard, New Mexico Environment Department, City of Santa Fe, the County of Santa Fe, and potentially the airport, which we haven't been able to get representation from the airport to meetings or like the town hall yet, but we're working on it. So, but those other players, they came together for the town hall, they answered questions that you all had, and then we had a debrief, and everybody does feel like it is in everybody's best interest of those stakeholders to continue to communicate with each other and really collaborate with each other on what they're doing to address this issue. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like quite yet, but I think at least we'll have quarterly meetings. You know, things move really slowly. I don't know if we need to have these task force meetings more frequent than that. But, you know, I am in communication with them, and if something changes, you know, we can let you know through these monthly PFAS meetings. Let's see. So with that, the other things that are happening. So what I'm going to do now, based on that meeting that we had with that task force, like 2 weeks ago, I'm going to give you the updates that I've learned about from these different stakeholders. So first of all, from Santa Fe County, with the grant money that they got from the Environment Department, that $469,000, they put out the RFP requesting technical experts to characterize the contamination. So that RFP is out, and you know, that closes, I don't actually know when, but soon. It's already been out for like 2 weeks. And yes, oh, it's a request for proposals. So what they have to do, the protocol or process is, so the county received a grant from the Environment Department, $469,000. So now what they're doing is they put it out to the community. It's online, and it's also advertised to basically engineering and technical experts, consultants who know about PFAS, know how to get in there and characterize the contamination. So it's out there to the public. People write proposals, and they say, this is what we can do. Well, the request for proposals is very specific. This is what we want. And then people respond, this is what we can do for this amount of money. And then there's a review committee that reviews those proposals, and then they select somebody to move forward and do the job. So that whole procurement, it's called the procurement process, will probably take about 3 months. So,
Two questions on that real
Yeah.
quick. Is there going to be any public participation and selection of the contractor?
Well, there's a review committee, and it won't be like public, no.
Okay.
But I don't know who they're going to select to be on that committee, so I can ask.
Okay, it would be good to have some community representation, because there are certain outfits that are kind of anti-community that we're all aware of.
Yeah,
And
it went nationally too, so it's not necessarily going to be a response from a local.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like national.
And by characterization, what information will that include?
So what they're going to do, this is what Andrea was talking about, is they're going to have to either put in a monitoring well, which is really expensive, or they're going to approach community members potentially and test their wells. So there's going to be some well water testing as part of this, and probably more than that. Like, I'm not a hydrologist, but they're going to be looking for a plume. So they're going to study the way the land works, how the water moves, where the original contamination that they know about is. I don't know, Phyllis, if you want to add anything to
No,
this.
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's more than just looking at wells. They also want to understand, like,
Surface
movement.
water, will they be looking
Yep,
at?
surface water and soil.
Like, how, yeah, so that's all characterization is
Yep,
testing the water and how big, and
Yeah.
how it moves.
and how it moves. Yeah, and how deep.
Yeah.
And do you know if they're going to actually, okay, and I won't ask you any more questions after this. This is my second question. Just, do you know how they're going to, whether they're going to identify different remediation measures?
Not yet.
I
part of
think
this?
that is not
No.
part of this.
Okay.
Okay, but you know who is doing that is the Army National Guard, which I was gonna get to that.
Okay.
But that's what they're doing. Okay. So this particular money, it's only 469,000, I think. We'll characterize it, and at least we'll know, like, you know, how, like, where is it moving, how big is it, you know, get an idea of what's going on with it. Anybody who may know different want to add something, or?
And only PFAS or other contaminants?
No, it's PFAS.
Only.
It's only.
And only
Yeah,
8 of them,
specific
they've
to that.
identified.
We're not looking at
only 8 of
nitrates.
the chemicals.
Only 8.
Yeah, and their
No, they're gonna
DOD.
look at more than just the 8. They're gonna
Okay,
be
the report
studying-
said just the 8. The DOD presentation?
No, that's not, that's something different. That's
Okay.
what Army National Guard is doing.
Okay,
What I'm talking about is what the county is doing with
Okay.
their grant.
gotcha.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
So I can jump to that. So the Army National Guard, so we have our state.
No, the other one that you're saying had more than 8.
Well, there's like 15,000 different kinds of PFAS compounds. So they're going to be tested. They're going to test the water and test all of them and see what they come up with. But there's going to be some common ones. I think there already is a pattern for anybody who's tested their well, and you know the data that we already know about. There's already some known common compounds that are present here. Yeah.
What's the guard doing?
I'm sorry.
The guard? Where are they doing?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. If you can just wait 1 second.
So, thank you for, I just introduce myself quickly. My name is Elena Fernandez. I am with Amigos Brothers. We work with water quality, preservation, and restoration for the state of New Mexico. So I'm just here as an observer. That's why I thank you for letting me sit in your community. Gathering. But one thing I think they will be testing for, one thing you really want to look for is the types of PFAS and the levels of PFAS. So that's something to be very cognizant of. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's
something we
helpful.
are
Thank
keeping
you.
an eye on it. And I'm also the co-chair of the toxic pollutant working group, so I do a lot with toxic pollutants. I did give my information to Shelly and Commissioner Bustamante as well, if you have any questions. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, so there, you know, the common ones that are in the news about PFAS is the PFOA and the PFOS. Those are a type of PFAS compound. And then when you test your wells, you not only find out the type of compound, but you find out how much is in there. And usually the measurement is in parts per trillion. So it could be 4 parts per trillion, or it could be 50 parts per trillion. I'm sorry, what's acceptable? So the EPA just passed a regulation.
There's a regulation now. There wasn't when we started.
It was actually like last week.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they specified the contamination for 4 specific PFAS compounds, and then there's something called an index for a combination of compounds. Okay. But for the most common ones, like we were just talking about, it's 4 parts per trillion that's the max they want to find. But it's different for different compounds. There's other ones where it's 10 parts per trillion. But it's very small. It's not a lot. Of course, the recommended amount is 0. And just to give you some scale to this, so there's some other places in New Mexico that have had that have found PFAS in their groundwater, their soil, and their water systems. And 2 of them are in our Army bases. One is down in Alamogordo, and the other one is in Clovis, Curry County, Clovis, New Mexico. And the amounts that they're finding there, I don't actually know about Alamogordo, but I talked to the county manager in Curry County, which is Clovis, which is the Cannon Air Force Base. They're finding like 28,000 parts per trillion. Here at the National Guard, I think the largest number was around 320 parts per trillion. So scale matters. And then when you look at your well, not to belittle it, but scale, quantity, dose, it matters. So, and then I actually, you know, started looking all this stuff up about all over the country, and there's contamination basically from Air Force bases all over our country. And the one I looked at in California, I was visiting my sister, and she lived near one. And their contamination was like 380,000 parts per trillion. So some of this pollution, some of these contaminants are really, really high. And it is becoming it is a national conversation. There was a news story on it just today in the Times.
So do they resolve any of those?
Well, the federal government is stepping up, right? So there's
And how long has that been going on?
years.
Years.
I think Cannon Air Force Base first found theirs, and gosh, I don't want to give the wrong year, 2012 or 2015. And I would say they're just starting to address it with the community in the past 18 months. So, yeah, and I don't want us to get off guard because we have a really great demonstration. We really want to get to testing and filtration here, but
Quick question about absorption. All of the conversations I've heard have been measured in like parts per trillion. But that doesn't measure the amount you ingest over a lifetime, over 5 years or. Is there any studying being done of that aspect?
I just don't know. I mean, there's studies that are looking at the impact on health, which I don't think that's really what you're looking at. And then there's studies to look at all the different ways that we're exposed to PFAS. But did you want to say something? Go ahead.
I talked to the bureau chief at the Department of Health, and that's where what's in your body. And I asked that exact question, how much is absorbed by your body per how much you drink. They're just now starting to do studies on humans on that kind of thing, so we don't know. Yeah.
What I read is that it says the U.S. Environment Protection Agency now believes there is no safe level for two common PFAS, PFOA or PFOS, in drinking water. And it acknowledges that very low concentrations of other PFAS present human health risks.
Right.
So do not drink it, do not consume it, test your water, and get it filtered. And that's all I can tell you. From what I've read and what I've been hearing, don't drink it. The EPA did say any levels, and that's what I figured. It's in your shampoo, but we're not eating our shampoo, right? We're not like, it's in our clothes and we're not,
But
that's
it
just
depends
going
what
straight
kind.
into your organs.
Right.
It's going in your organs, your kidneys have to filter,
The two
your
bad
liver.
ones, though, are only the Army foam and
Yeah, and we
Teflon.
don't know. I have
But no,
different.
it'll come. Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to move
Yeah.
on.
Thank you for
that.
But I did want to say that what's important to know though, right now about what's happening is that there's the county funds, the 459,000, and then put on this timeline that when they
I'm
did
just going to
their,
get to this.
oh, you're just
Yeah.
going to do it? Okay, good.
So the other thing the county is doing from their community development department is they're creating a home rehabilitation and energy efficient program, HREE. And what this program will do, it's a grant program for low-income families up to $50,000, and it's a home improvement, right? So I'm just going to make sure I get this right. So for low-income homeowners to apply for up to $50,000 to make certain home repairs and upgrades. So it can include new roof, new stucco, new windows. You can also include testing for PFAS, and it can also include filtration. It's a grant. It's not a loan, and it's an income qualifier. And they're going to present it to the county commission on the 30th of this month, and they hope to have the money out there and available within the next 30 days.
And I would suggest that we get a group of residents together to support that at that meeting. So I'd like to just mention that as well.
That could be one of the things that the task force.
That'd be great.
And then actually, what I want to talk about is just the difference between what the National Guard is doing.
I'm going to get to that
Okay, we
too.
can do that too.
And I have an update, so that'll be useful. Okay. I also just want to tell you that the city is also partnering with the Environment Department, and they are also creating a plan and getting ready to try and figure out the contamination levels from the wastewater treatment plant. So they're going to be looking at soil and groundwater, and that's all I have on my notes. Okay. So what they hope is that they should be starting that work in 30 days, is what I was told. So that's another thing. So that's the city looking at wastewater treatment plant. You've got the county characterizing the plume that's happening, that's polluting your area. You've got their grant program to help low people not only do other home repairs, and that's countywide, by the way. It's not just here. It's countywide. You can apply for this grant. But what's included, what they added because of this issue, is testing and filtration. that wasn't the original part of this grant program. And then the city and the county together are creating a memorandum of agreement to try and coordinate their efforts to address this issue together. So that's also in the works. Okay, and then the Army National Guard, they're the ones responsible for really trying to understand the level of contamination from the Army National Guard. And, you know, their process is going to be, it's extensive. It has a community involvement piece. And then and where they are right now is their remedial investigation. So actually right now, I talked to the guy today, they're creating their plan. That has to be presented, this is on a federal level. And they are not only addressing the PFAS here in New Mexico, but there's 30 other Army National Guards that they're addressing at the same time. So this is one big plan that they're putting together to present. And what they hope is that that plan will be reviewed in May or June, and that they hope to be in the field here. They're going to have more monitoring wells, they're going to test groundwater and soil, and they hope to start that in September. So there's a lot going on. It's just government, it takes time, it takes bureaucracy, it just takes time. Okay, the other thing I wanted to tell you all is that we have a place for you to sign up on the Santa Fe County PFAS webpage, which if you just Google it, you'll go right to it. There's a place that you can sign up for updates. So we started we put out our first update. We're going to do that as long as there are updates. I'll probably come out like every 2 weeks if there's something to say. So I just advise you to look at that. And then there's also other resources on there that you can read and download and use. Let's see. And that's it. So now, unless anybody has any other questions or comments, let's turn it to filtration and lab test and testing your wells.
I'll just say you're all gonna have like 1,000 other questions. And even though we're gonna move on to filtration and testing after this, we're gonna talk about the subcommittee. And then we're gonna actually start creating a list of topics that we want to be addressed at each meeting. So each meeting is going to be like we're thinking, you get to dictate how this is actually gonna work. But my suggestion is that each one will be part education session and part work session. And so that's kind of what I'm proposing is the format for these PFAS meetings. If you decide on a different format, that's totally fine. I won't go home and cry about it. It's gonna be totally okay. I just wanted to let you know that you know, that's another way to get some of your other questions and topics that you want answered, addressed is through each of these meetings and setting up the right people to come and answer each of your questions.
Okay, so the only thing I really want to say about testing is that if you plan to or you talk to someone who plans to test their well, it's really important for you to use a certified lab so you know that they are going to do the job well and do it right, and they're certified to test for PFAS. And I brought copies of a list of certified labs, and it looks like this, and it's on the back table. And this was created by the Environment Department, and they're also the ones that certify the labs. And just look on here, and it'll tell you which chemicals they test for. So not all of the ones on here test for PFAS, so I suggest that you look at it. And it's not cheap, right? So it's probably going to be around $350, potentially more. So, say it again. Oh, because it's from the Environment Department, and these are for all kinds of things that people may want to test for, not just PFAS.
I've got another question.
Yeah.
If these other places that you mentioned, I think I heard you say something like 350,000 for trivia.
Yeah.
What are we worried about?
Well, you know, yeah, no, it's a concern, you know. You can't.
Well, you're making everybody feel like, you know.
Like panicking?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm doing it, but you know, it is what it is. And you know what else? PFAS is in so many things. It's not just water. It's in so many products. It's in your bottled water. It's in the inside of the microwave popcorn bags that I've been using. You know, it's in your cookware. Gore-Tex clothing, carpet, stain resistant stuff, dental floss. It's we all probably have it in our blood. There was a test in 2019 done by the CDC, and in their sample, 99% of those people had PFAS in their blood. And they didn't necessarily live somewhere where they were drinking contaminated water. And as a matter of fact, the EPA figures that 80% of PFAS that people have in their blood comes from sources other than water. So I don't want you all to panic. I'm telling you this to just put it in some context. And the reason I gave those numbers is to decrease the panic, to try and put this into context for you all. So, thank you. Yeah, and there is.
So, I'm sorry. Do we have a reason to be concerned?
Well, I figure about the health, but we're gonna have to do a separate presentation on the health, and then you have to decide
I did
for yourself.
create a handout on PFAS in your health, and I just advise you to read about it, just research it. And that's your own decision. Like, I can't tell you to be concerned or not be concerned. It really is your own decision for your own self. But I am here to give you information to make the decisions that you want to make.
One more thing along that line, I want to press. I've lived in La Cienega for 43 years, and I've been drinking that water. And it just surfaced in what? They said 2000, 2003. Me and this guy moved in about the same time. And we ain't going at night yet, I checked.
Yeah, so that's just what I advise, read about
I think for young
it.
kids, it might be.
Or any kidney or testicular cancer?
I'm sorry?
Any kidney or testicular cancer? Or changes in liver enzymes?
Hey, refresh my memory, what?
Okay, let's move on. All right, so, the testing of the wells. And the reason I'm talking about testing filtration is because Andrea gets a lot of questions, I get a lot of questions, and there are a lot about testing and filtration. So we decided tonight, let's talk about it. Let's give you all more information. And like I said, my only message about well testing is, don't buy the $10 kit and go after with a cup. And, you can contaminate your sample just by the cup you use. So use a certified lab, use a company who knows what they're doing so you get accurate results. And now let's move to, why don't we start with Adam, because he's got the big systems, and then we'll move over to Phyllis, and this is Adam Romero, and he does install filtration professionally. And like Andrea said, we're not here to promote Adam per se. He has so much knowledge. I called him on my day 2 of this work, and he told me so much about filtration that was really, really helpful. So with that, Adam, I'm going to give it over to you.
And if you need to leave, but you would be interested in being on the committee, if you could either just write that on the sign-in sheet, just next to your name, or let me know, that would be great.
I'm sure.
Thank you all. I believe I have to drive back to the house. So, no, I really appreciate it. I'm here to help. So, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, hello. So my name's Andrea Romero. I actually own a water treatment company here in San Jose. I primarily serve all of northern New Mexico. And of course, there are different water treatment companies. I'm not here necessarily, like Shelly mentioned, to endorse myself. I'm more so here to give you guys ideas of options that you might see on the market and kind of give an idea of what system does what. Obviously, with anything that's out there, there's going to be good, better, best scenarios in water treatment. And yeah, I give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been working in water treatment for about 14 years now. My company's been in business for about 5 years, but I manage some of the other local competition in town. But yeah, water treatment industry has been kind of battling PFAS contaminants as well as substantially worse contaminants. And I know, it's nothing that's necessary. I don't want to downplay what you guys are dealing with. I lived in La Cienega a good while, a long time myself, had 5 kids. So my kids were exposed to it, potentially as well, because this stuff's been around forever. PFAS chemicals, also known as forever chemicals, are named that for a specific reason. They are forever chemicals. They don't degrade over time naturally. But yeah, to give you an idea, we've been battling PFAS throughout the state in different segments, or people concerned with PFAS or different contaminants. I myself now live in Nam Bay, where we have high levels of uranium and arsenic. So substantially worse and more expensive stuff to deal with than PFAS. PFAS is like, for us in the water treatment industry, it's easy peasy, easy donuts to deal with. I mean, that's a good thing for you guys. It doesn't necessarily cost a lot, and I guess we kind of battle the stigmatism of, or the stigma of is it bad for me or is it gonna kill me? To be honest with you, a lot of the contaminants that are in water, with the exception of bacteria, doesn't necessarily get you sick immediately. This is all stuff that even uranium arsenic, this is stuff that gets you sick over long-term exposure. Long-term exposure resulting in potentially cancer and other, obviously, health concerns that are going to affect you later on down the road. I grew up a little south of Las Vegas in Tecolote, a small little village off the highway. You all might have passed by there and not even realized it was there. But growing up, I mean, we drank the water, and one of the biggest things growing up in the country is well water tastes substantially better than city water. And yeah, it does. You have mineralization, you have stuff that's not necessarily good for you, but it improves the taste of water opposed to city water that has chlorine. Some places will have chloramines. But the tricky part is, yeah, now after becoming a water treatment specialist, and we're WQA certified, so Water Quality Association certified as a water treatment specialist. And there's a few of us throughout the state. I think we're probably the only ones in northern New Mexico. I think Good Water is certified as well, another water treatment company here in town. But essentially, yeah, our job is to kind of help educate everybody. Myself being from Las Vegas, now growing up and testing our water, man, we had a lot of really bad stuff in the water growing up, and I exposed myself, and my family's been exposed to it for their life. But of course, we have tons of cancer in our families, so is it related? I don't know, but it probably didn't help. So yeah, I'm going to give you guys just ideas of what you might see on the market, what is a better solution opposed to others, and kind of just give you guys ideas of what's potentially out there. There are a few different options for water treatment. Some of you guys might have things that potentially look similar to this stuff. This is a reverse osmosis system. There's types of different water filters. There's big systems for your whole home and that sort of stuff. And they all kind of do slightly different things. And that's kind of what I want to kind of answer for you all if you all have any questions, and then to kind of give you an idea of what might be potentially better, give you an idea of pricing, reverse osmosis systems, water filters. If you Google them or you get on Amazon, they're going to be anywhere between $10 to $10,000. What's the difference? I'm going to give you guys ideas and a little bit of information on what might be the difference between different systems. But for the most part, the mediation we do and we have been doing for people that are potentially affected are two types of systems. And the two types of systems you'll usually see on the market or descriptions of systems are point of entry systems. Those are going to be whole home filtration systems for your entire home. So all your water will be passing through that. And then you have systems that are called point of use. And those are under sink systems, specifically designed just, let's say, for your drinking water. There are better systems that are out on the market opposed to others. The tricky part with PFAS, even though it's been on the radar of water treatment companies for a long time, there's not a lot of stuff that is necessarily certified yet to remove it. That's the tricky part. There's stuff that is NSF certified to remove some specific contaminants in drinking water, and there's been proven studies that they've reduced, levels of PFAS or different contaminants, but there's not a lot of products on the market that have actually gone through the certification yet. There are a few, but there's not a whole lot. So a lot of the stuff, even if it's ASA certified and NSF certified, a lot of stuff isn't necessarily certified for PFAS removal quite yet. But there are a lot of proven methods to reduce it. The tricky part is there's nothing that really gets rid of it all completely, but there's stuff that has been proven to show 99.9%, reduction, which is just about everything in there. Give you an idea, there's going to be different types of filters on the market. You're going to see stuff like this. This is going to be under sink filters. These are carbon block filters. There's a lot of stuff that unfortunately kind of claims to get removed, to remove or reduce stuff, but there's gonna be a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily quite effective at it. The best kind of stuff that's gonna be on the market right now that's available is catalytic carbon. So catalytic carbon is ultra refined carbon. These are granules. This type of carbon has gone through a catalytic process of manufacturing, which essentially starts off as coconut shell. So it's carbon made out of coconut shells. It goes through an activated carbon process and then a catalytic process. So you're going to see catalytic carbon, activated carbon, and coconut shell carbon. The best type of stuff to remove PFAS from your water is going to be catalytic carbon. It's going to be a little pricier than everything else on the market, but it's not too bad. Stuff like this, these are carbon block filters. These have been used in the water treatment industry for a very long time. We're talking 30, 40 years, primarily to remove chlorine, VOCs, which are volatile organics, and matter from the water and improve taste and odor. These help, but they don't really offer a really good solution. I saw some of the zero water pictures outside. Those are essentially removing what's called TDS from water, so total dissolved solids in the water. Those are removing literally kind of everything in the water. The tricky part with that kind of stuff, I think I heard her mentioning that it's more of a temporary fix, and that's the reason being it just doesn't give you necessarily a big quantity of use out of them. And the reason being is those guys kind of hold on to the stuff, and then you have to replace your filters and blah, blah, blah. And they reach capacity relatively quick, but it just depends on your family size or the amount of use.
How quick?
They have a threshold in gallons, so it's really just based on
400 gallons,
yeah,
some
it's
of the
like
ones here.
some are 2, some are 3, some are 400 gallons. Stuff like this, these kind of systems are what we have been installing in wells, and these kind of vessels, you can put just about anything in there to remove different types of contaminants in water, but for PFAS removal, we'd be filling it up with granulated carbon. Something like this is a 1.5 cubic foot system. 1.5 cubic foot systems will give you roughly about 1,200, what is it? It is 120,000 gallons worth of contaminant reduction.
So that again, how much?
120,000 gallons. So to kind of give you an idea,
So how much are those?
it just depends on the brand you're going with. I'm not here to necessarily represent my company. I'm just more so to kind of give you guys ideas of what you'll see on the market.
Those go in the well?
Correct. Yeah, these type of systems you'd see going into a well or in the point of entry of the home itself to treat the entire.
So either or.
Correct. Those are what they call point of entry. Yes, sir.
So how do you know when you get 120, what was it, 100 or 1,000?
Yeah, so normally this kind of stuff, I mean, it's kind of tricky. So most people on average, and it sounds like a lot, use statistically about 65 gallons of water per day. So the way you size up these systems primarily is based on your estimated water usage. Obviously, you kind of want to kind of prematurely change out the media inside. So what you do with these guys is we try to size them up so that you at least have treated water for about 5 years, and then 5 years comes, you take out the old carbon, you literally just kind of vacuum it out, and then you dump in new carbon in there, and then you're good for another.
How often do you have to put that in?
Yeah, roughly about every 5 years. I'll kind of be on the safe side. Yeah, it's sized up accordingly. So something like this usually would give a family of like 6, clean water for 5 years or so, and you could probably reach about 7 years, to be honest with you. The tricky part, all this kind of stuff is absorbent. These catalytic carbon has absorbent properties to it, so it holds, so it just has to hold no more. So to be on the safe side, we always try to set that. You might have a few more years on there, but most people aren't on top of stuff. I know myself ain't, so we try to size stuff up to last you at the very minimum 5 years, and that way we're on the safe side.
And then how do you guys dispose of that material? Once it's
This you can just this stuff is humanly safe to just dispose of, just at the waste disposal.
it's gonna hold on to it.
It does. So waste management here in Santa Fe, they actually you'll tell them what you're disposing of, and they have different resources to dispose of. So like we have rain and arsenic filters. Yeah, so they have a specialty division that will properly dispose of. But the thing is, a lot of these filters are actually fine to just throw in your trash. I mean, a according to, you know, it's kind of dicey, but yeah.
That's a hazardous waste.
It is a hazardous
hazardous
waste, yes,
waste.
it is a hazardous
They have-
waste.
they have a
So,
site
so
for
waste
it.
management does have a hazardous waste department that will handle this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
when we, you know, replace media, we take it to hazardous waste ourselves. You know, I don't know what most consumers would be doing, but it's probably advisable between those 5-year marks, even if you put a system in, it's probably advisable that you have some type of professional probably dispose of the material for you.
We'll talk about all that, but
Yeah.
the temporary fixes.
Correct.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, another question, where you set this, is that gonna filter all the water you use? Because most people water their trees in the garden or whatever.
Yeah, so if you're putting it in your well essentially right after your wellhead, then yeah, you'll be filtering out everything.
Can you just do it for the house?
You can't do it specifically for the house. You would then at that point try to segregate your hose beds or whatever you're watering with, so you're not necessarily.
Yeah, that would be the best way to do it,
Don't
because
they
you don't
come
want
with
to
a
filter.
diverter or something?
So so these tanks will have what they call a bypass on it, so you can bypass the system. But in most cases, the tricky part is, my father was a contractor here in San Diego for like 35 years. And we usually have to get pretty creative when we're installing water treatment equipment, because there's almost no home that was designed for water treatment. So we have to get really creative. So in an ideal world, yeah, you would be only focusing on the water you're gonna be using inside your house, but in most cases, there's no way to divert it unless you're manually installing it or having a plumber install it in a way that it's not affecting your outside hose beds or your stuff that you're watering with.
My only thought is some of us use our water in our gardens
Correct,
and PFAS bioaccumulates.
correct.
So I don't necessarily want to test the measure of how much PFAS I would end up in my lettuce.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's a problem to put it
No,
on.
it's not. You essentially what you'd kind of be doing in that regard is kind of obviously getting a general idea of how much watering you're doing and then calculating that into the size of system you need. To kind of, if you're watering, 20 gallons of water, and you're adding that to your kind of, your total amount of usage per day or whatnot, based on how much you're going with. And to give you an example, reverse osmosis, again, it's good to see reverse osmosis. If you guys have kind of been researching reverse osmosis, kind of I guess you would say the kind of gold standard for practical water treatment in most households. Reverse osmosis essentially gets rid of all elements of water, just like the zero water pitchers. The only difference between the zero water pitcher and these guys is these guys actually hook up to your drain, unfortunately, and are putting the contaminants down the drain.
Or into your septic.
Yeah, into your septic. Into your septic.
Well,
So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of in reality, it's that cycle.
But it's multiple out of the filters.
Correct.
It's the filters that have those.
Well, not necessarily.
Oh, yeah. No,
So
I
not
kind of
necessarily.
figured that
Reverse
out.
osmosis is essentially high pressure filtration. So you have a high pressure, what they call a membrane in there. And that membrane is essentially very tightly wound, and it's capturing very small microns of matter in water. But then at the same time, it pushes that remnants down your drain. So like uranium and arsenic and stuff like that, we don't have no other option. That's our option for uranium and arsenic and very bad stuff removal. So yeah, it's going down the drain, and of course it's that kind of endless cycle. But the idea is obviously it's there. They're not going to probably get rid of it in the groundwater regardless of how hard they try, because it's there. So it's going to be, the idea is you're taking it out of your drinking water, out of the water you're using. It's probably not going to be a way to get rid of it out of all the water. And that's the tricky part. PFAS is being, detected in pretty much all water sources all the way up to Alaska. It's kind of all over the place, and that's going to be kind of a fact of life. And it's in everything. It really is. It's in thousands and thousands of components and materials and things we buy in our daily life. But there's going to be different stuff out there. You have other permanent entry systems. So a lot of you guys will, I've been looking at well after well after well in the area. And a lot of people have something similar like this in their well, where you can actually put in, this doesn't offer as much, volume of removal as something like this. But these are what's nice is you have, obviously this guy would be a part mounted to your wall. these guys spin off.
This is a point of entry thing?
This is our point of entry as
And
well.
this is a
And then this is
smaller
essentially a
version.
housing, yeah, it's a small variation of one of these. Then you would have something like this that you would then jump in, granular carbon in there. And then this periodically you dump out the old stuff, put in new stuff. But these guys sit in your housing, screw it back up, and then you have X amount. So most of the times, those give you about, I think it's something like 5,000 gallons worth of removal of PFAS.
Can you tell us, like, how much, like, if I'm just in like a typical, you know, like a 2 or 3 bedroom household, how much water do people usually use a day?
So it's tricky because so statistically, average person uses about 65 gallons of water per day. And that's flushing toilets, taking showers. And the tricky part, it sounds like a lot, but a lot of shower heads are like 7 gallons per minute. You know, so if you're taking a shower for 5 minutes, you're using 35 gallons of water just in that shower. So it adds up. So that kind of gives you a general idea of what type of usage. I mean, a lot of people, the good thing is, a lot of people in the area are pretty good about water consumption. We're not really water hugs. I think everybody knows that we don't have water, so we can't get too overzealous with it. But those are a few options to see out there. And of course, there's going to be price difference on the stuff you see. I would probably recommend going for kind of mid-tier, mid-price point stuff if you see it on there. Reverse osmosis systems, if you're seeing a reverse osmosis anywhere between the realm of like $300 to $600, that's probably a pretty decent system. Anything below that probably hasn't gone through certification, and it's probably poor quality, to be honest with you. There's stuff out there on Amazon for $150, $200. They will function. The tricky part is the technology is so basic that they usually malfunction pretty easily. They don't give you a good lifespan. Something like this, a good quality system like this will last about 15 years, so it's pretty.
And how much
worth investing.
about would that cost?
Something like this, depends on the brand you go with. Like I said, you can get a pretty decent quality one for anywhere between, $300 to $600. Something like this, we sell ours, to be honest with you, for $595, but we install it, and then we did a 25% off just to help affected people in the area. We did the same thing when we had the fires in northern New Mexico. We were offering huge discounts and trying to get people. We got a lot of people in their systems for free, but of course that was a different resource because that was totally the government's fault. So a little tricky on that end, but yeah, I mean, there's water treatment companies out there that I've had a few customers that I've met along the way, and have kind of told me, well, my neighbor paid this amount for it. Was there a reason to pay that much? Probably the honest answer is it's just dishonest people. That's a tricky part. You're going to find water treatment companies selling this stuff for pretty darn expensive because the water treatment company is able to do it. They're the professionals, and some of this type of stuff has big volumes. Give you an idea, like we sell something like that for $1,200 minus the 25% off, free installation, blah, blah, blah. But there's companies out there selling something like that for like $3,000. And that's not necessarily that it's any better or any worse. There's actually companies, unfortunately, locally that are selling those for like $3,000, and they're actually not very good quality. They're kind of, they pick them up for $400 and then flip them for a big amount of money.
So you say 1,200, you install it?
Yeah, we're full turnkey, so we install stuff like that. I would only advise, and we're here to kind of, if you have questions, we're here to kind of answer. We're the only 5-star rated in the state of New Mexico for water treatment right now. We try to take good pride in that. But yeah, my job is kind of just to try to help educate and help people. So I've helped people install, even if it's not us installing it or them kind of DIYing it themselves. It's perfectly fine. But if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer. At any point.
How often do you have to change those filters on the reverse osmosis?
On the reverse osmosis, so most reverse osmosis systems will have a 6-month to a 1-year filter change interval. The tricky part is, and that's another thing. You're going to get online and you're going to see 3-stage, 5-stage, 10-stage reverse osmosis systems. In reality, the more stages you're seeing, it's probably gimmicky, to be honest with you, because reverse osmosis is, like I said, it's a pretty basic, pretty simple setup. The main workhorse is your reverse osmosis membrane. That's the stuff that's the guy that's really removing the bad stuff in water. The rest of the stuff, you'll have a sediment filter that essentially is just something like this, obviously a lot smaller, but that's just removing dirt and sand from your water. Then you're going to have your final filter, which is a carbon filter. So it's primarily, like I said, it's primarily designed to improve like taste and odor in water. The main guy that's really removing it is that reverse osmosis membrane. And a lot of times, like this is a 3-stage system. That's all you need to achieve the results you need. But a lot of times when you're going to see a 5-stage or 7-stage, or I mean, there's even like 12-stage systems out there. It's literally carbon filters over and over and over and over again in different shapes and different sizes. I even have examples of different stuff you'll see out there, but it's all doing the same thing. So it's just redundant. But when it comes time to change those filters, instead of changing 2 filters, you're changing 10 filters. So that's how those companies make money. You know what I mean? So just something to kind of look out for.
And how much are the filters when you change them out?
It just depends on the brand of the system. So if you're changing, if you're changing 7 filters, well, they come in different shapes, but a lot of those filters are going to be, like I said, carbon filters, different shapes, and some of those different shapes cost more because they're special shapes. You know?
And the membrane filters just
the
cost
membrane
more.
is what's really doing the real heavy
They
lifting.
cost more. It will be more, but you won't have to change as often.
Yeah, a membrane will last about, if you have pretty decent quality water. So that's the good thing, and then the kind of discouraging thing about your guys' water. Your guys' water, if it wasn't for the PFAS contaminants in there, it's some of the best water I've tested in the state. Now, I've tested just about everywhere. We're all over the place. I'm up in Red River next week doing a small little rustic cabin resort up there, and they have terrible water. You guys have some of the best water there is in the state. I mean, with the exception of obviously some contaminants in there, which is unfortunate, but you guys have good quality water coming in. So a membrane for you guys will probably last like 5 to 7 years. Just that filter that actually does the heavy lifting.
So for the whole well filtration systems for people who are going to be like irrigating plants and vegetable gardens or whatever, can you install those on a shared well so that it would actually filter for all 3 households?
Yeah, so we've done that in a lot of cases. Obviously, we're going to size it up based on. We're going to ask, like for us, we would ask you how many people in the household, and that's how we'll estimate the size we need. But yeah, I mean, as long as most wells have the option to either segregate or not segregate if they're shared wells. You just do it before it splits off in different directions, and then you just have one system, filtering everybody. So that's kind of the nice thing, because something like that, even the larger ones, they're like $1,400, which obviously is an expense. Once the 25% hits, then it's like $1,100. But split 3 ways or 2 ways, it's not terrible, and then you have good water for 5 years. Reverse osmosis, on the other hand, it's a pretty practical option if you're just really worried about like your drinking water, the water coming out of your ice maker and stuff like that. That's the water you want to use for cooking and drinking, making coffee, tea, that sort of stuff. The nice thing about this is if you had other contaminants in your water, that's getting rid of it too. So we've tested. So we're not a testing laboratory, but we do handle testing samples, and we'll take those to, like, let's say, what was Hall Environmental in Albuquerque, which is a national testing laboratory now. It's Eurofins. We'll handle the actual proper collection and sample
Chain of
handling, the chain of custody of the samples to them, and then they can give you an idea. But we've tested, we have a mobile lab that we can give you a good idea of parameters that are there for other stuff, not PFAS. But there's been a lot of people that are testing kind of high for nitrates too, in which case certain stuff doesn't necessarily, that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily remove it. So
Carbon does it?
not necessarily, no, not for nitrates, no. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Phyllis, you want to talk about your picture?
This will be very, very quick. And I'm going to go back to what's your level of concern? What have you been doing? Where are you feeling at? We have the PFAS and your health one, and I'm focused in on what they know today. If you'll notice, these are the naughty ones. There's like 6 to 8 that the Army National Guard, we're going to find out more information as time goes out of the 12,000 PFASs we're putting into our body. But right now, anything without a nitrate is what we're focused on. And make sure you get this one.
because you're gonna see the ones with the O are particularly not, okay? So that's what my focus is and what knowledge we have today. Who knows what, what we're gonna do. And so basically your level of concern, do you eat bacon? Do you eat tuna? Where's your level of sweeteners? What's your level of concern on cancer-causing agents? So if you want to wait to see what happens with the environmental grid, with the testing they're doing, and eventually how we're gonna fix it, you can have this intermediate time frame that doesn't cost too much. You can wash in it, you can shower in it, you can wash your dishes in it. That's okay with the numbers they have. These guys, and they are certified, if you go to Zero Water, you can dig through it, and they are certified to remove the naughty stuff, PFOA, PFOS. And, you'll see different things. You have to drill down on their website. I'm only bringing these two because you can find them at Walmart. Consumer Reports recommends these two. Consumer Reports also recommends, and my name and number and email is out there on that little bulletin board thing. They also have a recommendation for RO system, other systems. So this is okay. We want to see if they're, Fisher Price friendly with kids. Then you need to take them out so we can look at it, handle the filters. I have not looked up how much the filters cost. We've got $36 for the pitcher. That means you just pour your water. It takes time to come, but we're only talking about what you're ingesting right now. What's your level of concern? Is it just the water that's going into you, what you're cooking with, and what you're drinking? We've got under $50 temporary fixes until we know, is your well good or not? I mean, this neighbor well is good. You don't have to do anything. But he had to spend $500 or $600 to find out he didn't have to do anything. Right. Then we got the one where, shoot, I got some numbers in there. What's my level of concern? Shelly has a handout about vegetation. Some of it's kind of inconclusive on whether and what parts of the plants and the amount of exposure. Does the soil that you're using have stuff in it? Does the water, it's kind of like, should we, a temporary fix, wait and see for somebody else to come on, depending on your level of concern, or if you just want to say, done, I'm going to go for everything. I know a particular neighbor who has an acre, he's a plumber, he has an acre that has beautiful plants and whatnot, and based on the inconclusiveness on some of the stuff, he's eating his stuff still, and he did not put a filter. He used the activated charcoal because it's cheaper to change out. When I was at the Department of Health, you'll see a handout, the Bureau Chief of Epidemiology and Response, their numbers on there, he's the one who just said, if you're really concerned, RO takes it all out. I have to drill down on what happens to water and how much gets into it, because I haven't heard that yet. But I drill down on stuff. I see different things and I try to drill down. Andrea?
I actually do have a question. So, testing and getting an RO system are almost the same price, is what kind of we're hearing, right?
Well, RO
It's
prices,
tricky.
I've talked to a chemical engineer who stuck one in his house, he's handy, and his system costs $250. The Bureau Chief told me the systems he's seen that are good are $250, but you have to install them. This guy is saying for $600 minus 25%, which puts you under like $380.
Yeah, well, and I mostly was saying, that $300 to $600 price range, if you're shopping on your own, that's probably going to give you a pretty decent system.
And the drinking, this is the problem. This is slower, it comes out slower,
Yeah.
You're drinking it, and again, it's this baby, and people will tell you, oh, RO is bad for you. Distilled water is kind of bad for you. It saps all the minerals out. But the new ROs make sure they have a final stage, puts the minerals back in.
Correct.
So you're right.
So where do those go, under or in the well?
So these go underneath the kitchen sink, and what you would have, so these primarily focus on your drinking water. So anytime you pick up a bottle of water, whether it be mountain water or spring water or whatever sounds good, it's usually just for labeling and because, of course, for marketing. Usually, because a spring could literally be a puddle that's kind of gurgling. That's a spring.
La Cienega,
Yeah.
Cienega.
That's a spring, you know what I mean? And with some dead rats in it. So most of the time, spring water or mountain water or whatever the heck it is has gone, if you flip it around and read the fine print, it's usually gonna say process through the process of reverse osmosis. That's what this is. This essentially gives you bottled quality water. I'd like to say better than bottled because of course that's the tricky part. Bottled water is reverse osmosis water, but as soon as it's in that bottle and light hits it, it starts degrading the plastics, and then in which case you have microplastics and PFAS.
But people can remember that the PFAS, 12,000 of them.
Yeah.
We're focused on the naughty. The other thing the guy told me is the ones that are bad in here, Teflon, Army foam. That's those particular ones, that's the only way we can get them. And then I asked a toxicologist, but this was about 10 years ago, I always use Teflon pans and scratch them. And he said, this was 10 years ago, things have changed. But 10 years ago, he said, yeah, if you use it for all 3 meals every day for 300 years, you're gonna start to get some. But things changed, that number changed. We went from 70 to 4. We're learning more and more and more. So what we're looking for is what can we afford and what's our level of concern. And what Shelly and Camila are trying to do, she teases me because I always threw an extra I in there. They're trying to find money to pay for this. I'm telling people out there on the road, and they've already received $500 a month in bottled water some people are using.
Only to get the microplastics.
I know, they don't know yet what that's going to do to us, but in the meantime.
So does that system cure your well water?
So yeah, this would essentially be taking out, so that's the tricky part. This and this kind of work similar to the same type of science. They remove what's called total dissolved solid water. These are solid, this is clear water solubles in water. So you wouldn't be able to see it. It's contaminants that are clear. You don't see them in your water, you just taste them and they taste great. But yeah, they remove contaminants from the water. The tricky part is that you're just changing filters a little bit more often for this, maybe not so often. This is more of a long-term solution. This would kind of, so what you would have, something like this, you would be having a separate little faucet at your kitchen sink, where now that's going to give you bottled water at your disposal. So you have kind of a limited bottle of water, and then you're going to want to use it for the tricky part. That kind of limits you to primarily just drinking. For this, kind of gives you the option for cooking, washing fruits and vegetables. If you're boiling a pot of pasta or stew, it gives you a little bit more quantity on demand.
Yes, these are slow. I don't know if you've ever seen a Brita filter, any of these. This one just, again, is what Consumer Reports recommended and what I found at Walmart. So, everybody can find this. They're slower. Go ahead.
I have another question. I'm assuming that water pressure is impacted, particularly on these big well filters.
So not so much, to be honest with you, not so much. You don't really, so a lot of these filters are what they call upflow systems, so they don't impact water pressure because they're designed for commercial applications. Like something like this, we did Bobcat Bite and Rudy's Barbecue here recently, and they have something similar to this on a commercial line. They actually have big ports where you're not slowing down water pressure. Stuff like this does require certain volumes of water pressure to properly work. So a lot of these wells, they'll have essentially a pressure switch in that well that tells the pump when to turn on and turn off. And a lot of those wells, some of them have a 35, 55 switch, a 45, 65 switch. Those are telling you the water pressures. A pressure switch that's 30, 50 will turn on at 30 and shut off at 50. So usually your max pressure is right around like 45 psi. In some cases, if your water pressure is a little lower, you have to add what's called a booster pump in series to this to just boost your water pressure. You want high pressure to be able to push through these filters so that you receive the proper filtration. That's where these ones, they work very well, to be honest with you, but they sometimes will reach capacity a little sooner because, of course, some people have more minerals in the water. So, like if you have hard water damages and destroys everything. So it really reduces the lifespan of those. The good thing is most of your water isn't hard. It's kind of naturally, it's not exactly soft, but it's very hard to justify putting in a water softener. So you'll get good results out of one of those. You just might not have, a lot of volume, but if you're mostly focused on just drinking, those are great. They really are. Those come with what's called a TDS meter, so a total dissolved meter, so you can actually monitor,
Just
yeah.
take pictures.
It's a little meter there that will actually monitor the amount of dissolved solids that are coming out of there. That way, it kind of lets you know when you have to change your filter and stuff like that, so you're not just going into the blind.
And I know we're going to, one last final little thing, and again, Shelly's been working on this, and, because the state, the bureau chief, he told me that Bernalillo would be fine to be dumping our filters in, because that landfill is lined. What year was ours made in? Is it lined? So we're investigating if we need a disposal plan for the filters or not. And this is from him. Many sources will tell you different things, but Shelly and I are working on whether we're going to have some kind of, if indeed a lot of people just say, okay, I just got to do the temporary thing until, for 6 months because it'll save me money or I can't afford anything else. But we're figuring out if we need a disposal plan. Some of what we're hearing is that it's not lined, but we're not sure. We're going to find out. Shelly's working hard on it. We're going to, thank you, Shelly, for everything.
The other thing I heard or I read is that some of these systems, these larger systems, when you change your filters, you send your filter back to the company and they dispose of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
probably do it correct.
So like, just for instance, a lot of the treatment companies are gonna be what's called like turnkey companies. So we're a turnkey company, so we handle like the service and stuff like that. But a lot of these companies that specialize in this, they'll do like your yearly or 5-year filter change, in which case you don't have to worry about the disposal being handled properly. They'll handle it for you. So like we won't take off the filters, we'll properly dispose it. That's kind of what we do. We service and maintain the systems for you if that's an option.
And so I just wanted to highlight on this handout, I mean, we have a bunch. Well, there's an FAQ with like 46 questions, and there's a copy of that back there, all these questions that came from you, and answers back there. But then Phyllis was telling me, like, she keeps getting these same 5 questions. So I made it really simple, 5 frequently asked questions, and on the back, just so, if you didn't take notes, or if you're like, reverse osmosis and this and that, there's a little table here that kind of explains it. There's some websites that you can go and learn more. So that's all there for you. There's an explanation of, point of use versus point of entry. Point of entry is on the well, point of use would be on the sink. So all of that is here. So if you take this handout, you can read it. Yes, they're back there.
I'll have some cards available to all of you. All of you cards, so you can have questions further on down that you want to ask. Another good thing is there's going to be tons of water treatment companies out there. Some of them offer leasing programs where you can get, reverse osmosis system or something like that. You're kind of leasing it, but you can get a system for like $20 a month or something like that. So it becomes a little bit more, affordable.
But save your receipts.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
Somebody's there.
I was gonna ask if, I do wanna let people ask questions if they want to, but I do wanna actually break into to see if we can get some people to work on the subcommittee at some point, so just let me know when you're ready to do that.
What would the subcommittee do?
I'm sorry?
What would the subcommittee do?
Well, that's for the subcommittee to determine, because so the things that we're already working on, let me just give you an example. Like the last week, I have spent of my work, luckily I work for myself. If I was not self-employed, I would be fired. That's what I have to say, because I spent probably about 15 hours of the work week dealing with PFAS related stuff. Okay, so that's putting together agendas, meeting with Shelly to talk about what the county is working on. I didn't talk this week with Commissioner Bustamante, but talking with Commissioner Bustamante, maybe meeting with some other player like the City of Santa Fe's people, or putting together, printing all this stuff out, putting together packets to give to people, answering questions that residents are sending to me via email. There's just like a lot. So any one of these things could be delegated to, a group to kind of say, well, I will help, I can help with this, I can help with that. I can sit and staple the handouts
before the meetings, or, you know, anything that anyone can do is appreciated and useful. So you don't have to be like the leader to be involved. That's what I want to say, you know. I'm going to remain involved, even though I'm technically the president of the Valley Association. I'm doing this right now because we don't have yet leadership for this subcommittee. Although Jolene has been stepping up to the plate to start doing that. You know, we really need to get at least a small group of leaders to keep things moving forward and to work with residents and to actually delegate out all the tasks. So that's what the subcommittee will do. And they'll also do, so the subcommittee needs to meet regularly before these meetings to say, hey, Shelly, Andrea, this is what we want on the agenda for residents for the next meeting. People have a lot of questions about health. We want to get the Department of Health to provide someone to come talk about blood testing and, you know, how PFAS affects our health. We want to know about, you know, there's just 1,000 questions related to PFAS. And so, you know, what's going on with that lawsuit? We get someone to talk about what's going on with that lawsuit. There's just a lot of things, but the committee needs to identify the topics for the next meeting each time. So that's really a big role of the subcommittee, is to kind of do that and just help take a little bit of the burden off of the few of us who are doing all this work right now. So, yeah.
If I could make a recommendation, because it's quite late, it's almost like 7:45. Perhaps anybody who's interested in being on the subcommittee can
Sign a sheet
or something, just because it's so late and lots happened today. So, you know, and you know,
Are we finished with the filtration?
Yeah, I think, unless anybody has any questions, I think, I could talk like for a week straight. So I have to, at some point, sometimes I'll go to, we do a consultation.